Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the Comedy Slab podcast. I'm Shane O'Connor, he's Adrian Lacey. If you're not caught up with us before, we both love comedy. And we've met a few people in our travels in the comedic world, and Adrian's worked with them and he's mic'd some of them up as well.
You've interviewed some of them. Don't write yourself
chatted,
out of
haven't we,
scripts.
and met, and it's nice actually to bring some of those stories in. We must do it one of the weeks. Basically, we sit down and we watch a comedy programme, and Adrian will choose one week and I'll choose one the next week, and then we reconvene the following week and we sit down and we decide what we think of it. I've done the chart, by the way, of all I've finished the chart of all the scores on the doors.
I thought it was just talk, but I take it back.
No, it's...
Mr. Spreadsheet.
I don't know what to do with it now, yeah. I've brought a PowerPoint presentation and a spreadsheet along with me. Although, just cast your mind back to the very first episode of the Comedy Slab, and you can still get it, boys and girls, if you'd like to go onto Spreaker or onto YouTube. It's available on both those outlets. The very first one, we critiqued Veep. I don't think we gave it a score, you know.
Oh, well, we hadn't settled on the rules. I remember you saying, would I watch the show again?
Would you watch more of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to go back and give it a score just to?
Oh. Shall I do it off the top of my head now?
Yeah.
It's certainly worth a 4. It's whether it's worth no, I'm going to stick with a 4. Yeah.
I'll give it a 4.5.
Oh, I nearly did, but
I better write that down somewhere, otherwise I'll...
You better put it on your spreadsheet. I'm sure the world is agog waiting for you to...
How do you think it gets on the spreadsheet in the first place? I have to write it down. I'm a little notepad. Hang on, let me get my crayon. I've got a crayon.
And I thought I was the obsessive one in this dysfunctional marriage.
Oh, what do we say? Veep, 8.5.
Yeah. Inside leg.
Anyway, where do we get to? So that's basically the rules of what we do, is we sit down and we watch a comedy programme, and I pick one and he picks one, and then we kind of meet at the end and decide what we'll give it out of 10. So we each get 5 points to distribute to the comedy programme of our choice that particular week. And it was my turn to choose last week, and I chose something which is, well, I'm guessing it's still at the... We haven't decided whether we're going to commission it stage. Would I be right in that, do you think? All they've done is made a pilot.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Yeah, on IMDb, which is, as we know, the closest thing to
heaven,
a Bible of, that sort of thing, movies and TV shows, they've got it down as, you could say it's a category error. They're calling it a TV movie, which, is a bit grand for, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
And they also date it for this very year, 2019. So that's interesting.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
That is correct, isn't it? It was 2019.
Was it?
Yeah, it's only just gone out. It only went out on the TV. That's where I saw it. I tell you what attracted my attention was it was touted as what did I say? A real-time sitcom. And I thought, what's that? I've got to watch that. I'll give that a go and have a look at it. And that's how I saw it.
So all the action, obviously, that means unfolds in real time.
Yeah.
Do you want a headline from me, as we tend to take in turns for headlines?
That was the other bit I forgot, wasn't it, really, is that we do generally say, go on, give us a headline, you source.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've only just thought that's what I need to do. Am I allowed a one-word headline? Yeah, it's very tabloid, isn't it? In huge white type on black relief, or white relief out of black, I should say, on the front of our notional tabloid, I would put frenetic. Okay. And I think that's what being real-time, well, in this instance, that's what it means. I think any other... Actually, maybe it's not true. You could have a non-real-time sitcom, which, of course, let's face it, most sitcoms are. They all chop and bounce about the timeline, or they tend to move forward across the timeline, or give or take. But I don't think I've seen a sitcom quite this frenetic for a while. It doesn't stop, and you almost... Maybe it's me. Maybe I needed a nap halfway through, but frenetic would be the word.
I don't think I'd argue with you there. I mean, it was fast, wasn't it? I think is the true description of it, don't you think? It's a farce.
It was in the Brian Ricks mould, I would have thought.
Yeah. Yeah, all he wanted is somebody to, well, I was going to say somebody to run on without their trousers, but
they do in the
we
end.
did have nudity in it as well, didn't we? In a slightly somewhat different context as well.
Yes.
For people who've not seen it, as I say, it's just a pilot at the moment, and that does make me wonder. Did you kind of sit there thinking, well, if you get the headline frenetic, you probably like me sat there and thought, I'm out of breath if this is the pilot. Like if they had to do a series of 6, you'd have to change the pace, wouldn't you? You couldn't.
I think so. I heard a comedian the other day. Maybe you'll have heard this as well. I'm desperately trying to think who it was. But there's someone who writes their own show, quite a big name. It may come back to me in the course of this show. So they will do it happened to be a bloke. So it's a one-man show, and it'll be. If you add in beginning to end, including the break, that's a 2-hourer.
2-hourer?
A 2-hourer.
A 2-hourer?
A 2-hourer.
Is that a type of dog? No, it's a chihuahua.
Don't push me. I haven't even had a G&T yet. Anyway.
It's a 2-hourer.
Yeah, very good, very good. Moving on, if we may. I'll leave you in the corner chuckling inanely to yourself. But he said he deliberately writes a section of the show to deliberately. Now you might think this is the section I should write. It's deliberately written to not be funny, and the reason being, he says he's tried it every which way, but a very experienced comic, which is why it's increasingly annoying that I can't remember their name. But every which way he's tried it, an audience just get tired of incessant laughing over a period of 2 hours minus breaks. So. That's really intriguing, isn't it? A comedian sitting down deliberately saying this is the section where there aren't many laughs. There might be the odd titter.
It's funny, actually, because we'll come to it in a bit because I can't find it on my notes at the moment. But there was a bit where there was a very... I know what it was. Shall I mention it now or should we do it later? I might ruin it a bit later on, I don't know. But the bit in...
Go with your instinct.
Okay, we'll do it in a bit. But there was a part in this where I definitely felt a change of gear, and I remember sitting there thinking, "Yeah, you actually need this because otherwise, it is just too much."
Yeah,
and I think that's quite astute for because the thing is, if you're a comedian, you want to make people laugh, don't you? You want to write gags.
That's the instinct, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you're sitting there and you're writing 4 minutes in the middle and you're thinking, well, no, this isn't funny, this is drama. But then, of course, it's the pathos in it that brings out that, you have to have that kind of antidote to the constant humour, like you say, otherwise people... It's the gag rate thing again, isn't it, don't you think? It's the gag rate. You don't want a gag rate 100 mile an hour.
No, but it's also, Lee Mack is the star of Semi-Detached, and he's literally going at a right old pelt, isn't he? And we follow him on a handheld camera a number of times.
Yeah,
he's only flitting across the road, but even that, it's not just the gag rate; it's the actual what feels like as a viewer the speed you're moving through space.
Yeah,
and yeah, you have to be in the mood for it. And a lot of people, I've been in this category a lot. You just want to come home sometimes, put your feet up, and watch something at a gentle pace. So it's not going to be for everyone. Certainly not for all time.
The difficulty, see, I'm not a fan of farce as well. In general terms, there have been times when I've watched farce and thought, actually, I don't mind. This is quite clever. It's quite good. And I can deal with it. But to my mind, one of the things with farce is that the faster the pace of a farce, there's a direct correlation between that and a reduction in the realism, I think.
Yeah.
Because you kind of think, well, nah, come on, hang on, this isn't, you know what I mean? And there is that as the one goes up, the other one goes down. And I think once, for me, there has to be a grounding. There has to be it has to be believable for it to be funny. It still has to have a believability, and I think that's as important as anything. And I think once you lose that, and that's my argument with farce, is that sometimes you think, oh, this is just ludicrous now. Although Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I've said this to you before, Curb Your Enthusiasm, which we reviewed a few slabs ago, and they used to say when Larry David was writing Seinfeld, they used to say to him, you know, this wouldn't happen to people. And he would, well, it happened to me.
Yeah.
And all this stuff.
It was better than that. It was, this wouldn't happen, and even if it did,
you
that person wouldn't
like
say that.
Yeah. And he goes, well, it did happen to me. And that's exactly what I did.
React like that.
Yeah. Which is,
and you can imagine him saying it, you can imagine him meaning it as well.
Yeah. So for the uninitiated, if you've not seen Semi-Detached, let me tell you, and in the blurb they've kind of written it up in a sentence which I think sums it up quite well. It says it's a real-time sitcom, and it follows the hapless Stuart, which is the Lee Mack character, as you rightly said, as he struggles through the worst half an hour of his life. And it's as simple as that, really. They go on to describe it in greater detail, which I won't, because, you know, it might ruin it completely if you're going to sit and watch it. And having listened to the Slab, that might do it for you anyway. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that, isn't it, really? I mean, cast we've got to talk about, because it's beautifully cast, isn't it, again? I mean, you just realise how blessed we are with comedy actors in this country when you start to see the faces pop up. If you're not expecting them, you think, oh, class.
Yes. And working on this show, I start to make the connections as well.
Yes.
Because we've got the wonderful Jeff McGivern, who's still, I mean, if you'd said his name without attaching a photo to it, I might have had to sort of scratch my head for a bit. But we saw him in Quacks, didn't we? As the,
that's right.
Landlord.
Yeah.
And, so he's been around the media block for a bit. Any other names you wanted to drop at this stage before we hear one of our 3 audio clips?
Do you know the thing you mentioned, Jeff McGivern as well, Geoffrey McGivern? He's done, why I like him. He's done. If you look at his CV, he's done tons of radio. He's done, you know, and I kind of think, oh, anyone who does that much radio has got to be all right by us. That's all I can say. He's done lots of radio plays, which I still love now. I must admit. I mean, I used to love as a kid, and then, you know, when I had jobs and I could listen to the radio, I used to love him then, and I love him now. I do. I love a good radio play. So he's done a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, and he's a facial now, isn't he? He's fast because if he's not already one of Britain's greatest character actors, you know, he's got to be close to, hasn't he? Don't you think? He pops up.
I thought you were about to call him a national treasure, but we were having this discussion before we hit record, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And you're not in full alignment, shall we say, with the people who get labelled national treasures.
Never.
It's a peculiarly British thing, I think.
Never. I'm never in alignment.
I can't believe you're never in alignment.
I'm never in. I don't. Come on, you name me one national treasure who you think that I'll be in alignment with, who people think isn't.
Well, I mentioned.
If you say Judy Dench, I'll punch you in the face.
Well, you can't because you're 150 miles north of me.
Punch the screen.
You'll punch a jiffy bag and send it to my address.
Is that a euphemism?
It's a euphemism. Anyway, I was going to name Sir Ian McKellen, but obviously you're not in alignment with that either, are you?
No, he's all right. He's not a national treasure, is he? Come on.
Oh,
behave yourself.
Well, I think he is.
National treasure. The only ones I can think of are dead. I mean, I'll put somebody like Stan Laurel. I would say was a national treasure, but you know.
Oh well, what about the guy who plays him in Stan and Ollie, namely one Steve Coogan?
Yeah, Coogan would be.
Alan Partridge.
He would want to be, would he? You know.
I don't know. I think he might be at that stage of the career where we would be very flattered by it. He might not have wanted it in his 20s and 30s, but now he'd think, I've earned that.
It depends how you told him, though, doesn't it? If you tapped his phone and then left a message on his answer phone that he didn't know about, he probably wouldn't be so keen on it.
Oh, very good. See what you did there.
Yeah, do you like that?
Yeah, you've done your research, yes. You've lost half the audience, but just about kept up with
you. Lazy devil. should we play
Read it in your cone tract.
Read the small print.
Right, we're well overdue an audio clip.
Yeah.
Could you talk me into this, because I haven't got the right page open on my phone?
Well, yeah, I mean, because again, for people who don't know, if we pick the program, we generally do the clips, don't we? So I do the clips. I pick the clips because I pick the program, and I picked this one because it's right at the top of the program, and it sets the scene as much as the scene is set for the viewer, as it were. Which you're picking up a lot as you go along, aren't you? So.
Absolutely.
There's not a lot of scene setting. You're kind of gathering information. And Stuart, the Lee Mack character, I mean, all you need to know is that his wife, sorry, not
Girlfriend.
his wife, his girlfriend, he's got a wife who lives across the road. His girlfriend has gone into labour.
Stuart!
Where's the bag?
Oh, my hand, oh, my hand.
I think we need to get a move on.
I want to share every beautiful moment together.
You just told me to set myself on fire.
It's fine. The doctor said there might be swings. After me, breathe in the love, breathe out the baby. Now you.
Breathe in the... Breathe out the... April, where's the hospital bag?
Oh, take all your clothes off.
What?
It's the oxytocin. The doctor said I might get randy.
She also said you might shit yourself.
I want to have this child while we make love.
I think we need to get you to the hospital.
Dad! Nam yo renge kyo.
Dad!
I'm entertaining.
Have you taken a bag out of my room?
Just a moment. Enter. Stuart, this is Igor.
Yeah.
Kicked off a bit early then. When you were born, your mother was twice as loud. Heard her from the pub.
Can you get out of bed? It's 2 o'clock.
Didn't get back until 9. Cannot remember beyond lunchtime. I know we had cocktails in town.
Dad, I need some help.
Then we did poppers in the bog at Café Rouge.
Dad,
Did we end up in a field?
have you seen a blue sports bag?
Full of nappies and nighties over there.
Am I being too literalist if I say I don't think Café Rouge was around in them days? But hey, it's farce, as you say. I'm obviously behind the farcical curve, and that's not a euphemism.
I'm going to be writing to Points of View just to in green pen just to let them know.
Their points of view. I wish to complain.
Disgusting.
At this point, we should point out it is a Happy Tramp production, and because it's on the Beeb, and because it's only just gone out as we speak, should still be available on the Player of Eye.
It is, yeah.
iPlayer.
I put a link actually for you so you can still see the episode. And catch up with that. Yeah, I mean, you get a feel, don't you, in that clip for just as you say how frenetic it is. It's and you're kind of trying to absorb a lot of info at the same time, aren't you, about all the different characters and I don't know whether did you find that they talked a little bit too quickly?
Yeah, there's one bit. Even though I played it to myself 3 or 4 times, literally. Some reference to Dow Jones, which is the New York Stock Exchange, equivalent of our FTSE. But even knowing that, I couldn't make out the rest of it. So, yeah. And pity the poor listener who's listening just then and hasn't seen it, because obviously there's visuals you're missing in audio clips. But again, I mean, you say it illustrates the pace, but hard to follow it. I was listening to your audio clips, not having seen the show once yesterday, and I was struggling to keep up with the audio, having seen the dance show before. Yeah. So yes, apologies, ladies and gentlemen, if that was a bit of a struggle, but
it's interesting because fast-paced, you kind of think you would expect them to say, okay, you've got to make sure that the dialogue is delivered cleanly and clearly. Because we're going at a hell of a pace here, so we need to, it needs to be as clear as possible. I've got to say though, the childbirth side of it, they've got absolutely bang on in terms of the things. Having been through that as assistant to the principal player, my overriding, and I say this to my wife, my overriding recollection of the day that she gave birth was her screaming at me for like 12 hours. I felt like my face had melted when I'd finished. I was just exhausted. It was just like I'd just been screamed at for 12 hours. So,
but I thought you were used to that, having been married for some years.
Yeah, I you would think, wouldn't you? But they just managed to turn it up a notch or two.
Turned it up to 11 or 12.
11, definitely. Can I mention the writer as well? Well, one of the writers.
Or writers, yeah.
Yeah, the one guy I don't really know much about, David Crowe. Although I think he's done a bit of acting, hasn't he? But Oliver,
they're both actor-writers, I think.
Oliver Maltman, famously, have you ever seen Star Stories?
No.
We must slab that one of the weeks.
Okay.
It was I always forget the guy's name. Kevin. I've got Eldon.
I always want to say Turvey when anyone says Kevin in comedy context.
So I went down the road.
That was a Rick Mile thing. Well, it's up your way, isn't it? West Midlands.
What was the guy who played Fletcher in the remake of, or Fletcher's grandson in the remake of Porridge?
Oh, is it a son of someone famous?
No. Anyway, he was the star of Star Stories. He was the guy that was in it.
Right.
And Oliver Maltman, who's the other writer of this particular show, played a number of characters, including famously Bob Geldof. He was brilliant as Bob Geldof. I mean, it was Kevin Bishop. That was it.
Oh yes, I was just getting there.
And they tell stories of what happened with the rich and famous, like Madonna and Tom Cruise, but they tell it their way, kind of thing, and it's not always as accurate as it could be, but very, very funny. But Oliver Maltman was in a number of episodes of Star Stories, so I mean, he's no slouch when it comes to comedic goings on. And interestingly enough, Ben Palmer, who's the director, actually was the director on Star Stories as well. So you're saying about how they all move in little groups.
Yes,
you do start to notice who works with who, don't you? Now it's who
yes,
works with whom.
And didn't Ben also direct In-Betweeners?
In-Betweeners, yeah. And one of my favourites as well, Chickens, which was the one I think I talked about. Was that last week?
Not Cowards.
No, Chickens.
That's a different show, right? Okay.
Which is where it's one of the guys from In-Betweeners and Johnny Sweet. It might be two of the guys from In-Betweeners actually, and Johnny Sweet, where they are all conscientious objectors.
I remember you saying that. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, Chickens. No, not to be confused with Cowards. That's
right. I'm easily confused, as you know.
Don't get your Chickens and your Cowards mixed up. Yeah.
Yes, Noel's and Noel Coward, Noel Chicken. Got to have a system, as Harry Hill says. But Johnny Sweet, of course, being in Party, which we slabbered last week, got our highest ever mark. That's going to get a gold star against it on your famous spreadsheet, isn't it?
It's going to be tough to beat, isn't it? 9.5.
It is.
It really is going to be tough to beat that one.
Very tough.
I wonder what impact this real-time thing has on the writing, talking about the writers as we are at the moment. I wonder whether you end up writing it more like you would write a play than a comedy, than a sitcom, do you think? Because it is more like a play. I mean, you could take that script and you could make it a play, couldn't you, without any trouble at all?
Yes. A few tweaks in terms of, you'd have to, perhaps you would make the wife live next door as opposed to across the road, just to make it easier to stage. But then, of course, we would be into the realm of My Wife Next Door, which I have very fond memories of, as I had a boyhood crush on Hannah Gordon. But hey, does it make it more theatrical? I guess so. My question was, does it make it a better work? That's quite simply the only question worth asking as an audience member. I do wonder whether it's sort of... it's like my brother-in-law said when I first started in TV. He said, I don't see what all this fuss is about doing live TV. It's just... At best, they get it right. At worst, it's a shambles. Yeah. And I'm thinking, just having started work in TV, I love live TV because I know when I'm going home. You don't get this nonsense of, can we just have an hour extra, please, crew? Call me ruthless, but that's how my mind started to work.
That's the difference. I mean, good writing, though. I must admit, I have to say, very sweary, and I noticed that when I tried to gather some clips together. Well, you probably heard in that clip that we just played that there was a swear word that was censored
finessed.
A bit. Yeah, finessed a bit. But I mean, funny stuff nonetheless. Do you think? Did it need to be that sweary? I don't know. I'm getting old now and thinking.
It's because you're a parent. It is apparent. Does it need to be that sweary?
There was a part where the daughter, where she takes her hat, she had her hair done, she takes her hat off, and her mother's response is "F off." And she like really shouts it.
I quite like that one because it's
that
not
made
the
me
normal
laugh
way
out
you
loud.
use
Yeah.
F off.
Yeah.
And also because the mother is an aspiring politician. I don't know if she's ever been elected, but we see she's got a sign up, saying vote for her. I didn't find it over sweary. I mean, it is that thing I was talking about the other week on the slab, about the more you get your characters to swear, the less each swear word has an effect. So I didn't feel it was getting to the point of devaluing the currency too much. It sounds like you're a bit concerned on that front, though.
I think only because, again, if I was when I sat and watched it without thinking, like without sort of critiquing it and without making notes and all the rest of it, it didn't bother me as much as when I realised then I'm going to have to get some clips out of this.
Right.
And unless we want to give our podcast an E rating, we're going to have to put a clip in without swearing in. Then it becomes a problem, doesn't it? Not so much as in a Mary Whitehouse sense.
Yeah. Didn't trouble me too much, but it was there, and I do wonder whether sometimes it's a bit of compensation for, perhaps we haven't got enough laughs here, just throw in an F word and see how we do. And that makes me sound incredibly old, even as a non-parent. But swearing can get laughs just for its own sake. It's just one word will. And especially in TV, you find swearing gets a laugh when something's gone wrong and an actor swears in an unscripted sense. That often gets a big laugh. Most of all, if that actor is playing a character who wouldn't normally expect to swear.
Yeah, it's the vicar
or if
with
it's
the
a clean
comedy
show.
teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we have another clip? Because we've got to bring
Let's do it.
Patrick Baladi in at this point, because up until this point, we thought we were going to see all we saw of him because he's been running around and trolling about in a kimono, hasn't he?
Yes.
I don't know why. I mean, he's got a Lamborghini on the drive and he wears a kimono. I suppose that says it all, does it? I don't know.
We don't need to add much, except this guy was the alpha male in the office who did very smooth dancing before the Ricky Gervais David Brent character does his or whatever it was, flash dance.
He was doing Saturday Night
Flash
Fever,
dance
wasn't he?
meets MC Hammer.
Yeah. Well, his character actually in the office was the guy who brought it all to an end for David Brent, wasn't he? Because he was the guy that
He
made
closed
him
the
redundant,
branch,
wasn't he?
Yeah.
Because there's that scene where he said, he gets all emotional and he said, "Don't make me go." Brilliant stuff.
Anyway, I suspect he's often that type of alpha male. Isn't that fair to say from looking quickly at his CV?
I've never seen anything else that he's been in. I looked at the stuff that he'd done, and they're not programs that I watch.
Okay.
So I couldn't really tell you.
Anyway, this is where again, my clip memory is gone, so I think you should lead into it. But this is where he's writhing, moaning, and certainly not in ecstasy.
Yeah, I mean, this is where Lee Mack's character goes round he talks to Barry, his neighbour, beforehand, Geoffrey McGivern, that we mentioned a little earlier, who for some reason he's sat on his drive in his camper van, isn't he? I don't understand what that's all about.
He is a bizarre character.
Beautifully bizarre. But he says, he's round the back, you want to go and see him, he's in the back garden kind of thing. So Lee Mack's character heads off through the back gate.
What the f*** are you doing?
I got the thumb off. Look.
Oh, Christ.
There's someone in the garden, a man in the bushes. I got distracted. Caught kimono and sword, took hand with it. Where's the thumb?
Where did you last see it?
On my hand, you moron.
Where did it land?
I don't know. I was too busy having my thumb cut off. Call an ambulance.
Yep.
Oh, dear me, Ted. Put some clothes on. I can see your aubergine.
Ambulance, please. It's got his thumb off. Find the thumb. My neighbour's got his thumb off on a DeWalt DC-S391XR.
Oh, nice bit of kit.
What the f***, mate?
6 Fountain Close, SM5.
Found it. Oh, gonna need a rinse.
OK, thanks. We have to raise the arm and pack the thumb in ice, apparently.
Leave it to me. I love a drama.
That's Barry at the end, of course, the Jeff McGivern character. You could get a job on BBC Radio 1 Extra editing out all the sweary Mary words on those heavy-duty rap songs. Anyway, well done on that.
I just love the way he says he's going to need a rinse and blows on it. It's the thumb.
And you laughed, we were playing that in real time, just to help my memory along. You laughed at the line, as did I can see your aubergine. And you see, Barry gets some good lines, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he deserves them
and
as well.
And the delivery is great as well, isn't it? I think he plays wacky quite well, doesn't he, really?
Yeah, ditzy.
I mean, I think they get a lot of mileage out the thumb, personally. I think they, it's Barry says to him, stay calm, how many fingers am I holding up?
And it gets worse later on, but so it's all happening, isn't it? It's all happening. So yeah, the lines are there. It's just I tell you what, it makes me think of the pace. This coming back to the F word we can say, frenetic. It reminds me of early Ben Elton, where I felt. I think you could feel his nerves, and he delivered very quickly. I mean, I think that's partly what adrenaline does to you. And there were times when Ben Elton, bless him, I mean, I've loved a lot of his stuff, but his stand-up routine can often, he doesn't take me with him, as it were.
Right.
And sometimes...
Because of the speed.
And I feel the same with this show. It doesn't carry me with it. It's a bit nervous in its energy. And I wonder if you identify with that at all.
Well, I mean, the bit that I started to talk about at the top of the slab this week was where there was a real change of pace, and it was the most beautifully delivered gear change that I've ever heard. I think in any kind of comedy program. And Lee Mack's character, he just says, "Time for a quick poo, I think."
That was a throwaway.
But he then, what that enables him to the character to do, he then goes up into the bathroom. He locks the bathroom door, doesn't he? He sits down on he just puts the lid down and sits on the toilet, gets his phone out and starts playing a computer game to kind of de-stress himself. But what I thought was really clever, and I'm not sure I've ever seen this done elsewhere, I don't know if you noticed this, was then you heard all the action going on outside. There was a minute 15 where there was no interaction with the Lee Mack character. He was just kind of hearing, and you were hearing what he was hearing while he was sat on the toilet. And I thought that was really clever, because I thought that for me, that kind of changed the pace, and that it stopped all the running around. I thought that was really clever, that bit. I really did.
Yeah. I think you've helped me see the significance of that more than I saw at the time. It's kind of having your cake and eating it, isn't it? Because you still get the story moving along, and yet it stood still as well at the same time. That is clever.
And it was like kind of a recap. It was like you heard a little bit of his girlfriend, and you heard a bit of his dad and what he was doing. You heard, and it was like it kind of just recapped all the characters and where they were, and what they were doing and what was happening and how it was all developed. I did honestly, I thought, wow, that is really smart. I mean, that was a really smart move, I thought, out of something, as I say, so beautifully delivered as time for a quick poo.
Which is something we'll want to quote forevermore now, and whenever we get stressed, we'll just use that as an excuse.
Yeah.
Can I just say, honourable mentions for Ellie White playing April, who's about to give birth. There's just something very real about that performance, and there's some gritty edge to her voice, which I think is amazing. And did you spot, talking as we were earlier, of starting to see where these actors crop up in other shows we've slabbed? Did you see where she had been elsewhere slabbed, in effect?
What, with Natasha Demetriou, you mean?
Yeah, Stathlet's Flats.
Well, they're actually, I think they did a double act show called Ellie and Tash, which was it was just an online thing, and it was produced by Harry Hill.
Oh, lummy.
But see, I know Ellie White from the Windsors. she played. I never know which one it is. Is it Beatrice or Eugenie? I can't remember which one's which. But they're a bit like Ant and Dec to me. But
is this the spitting image type puppets?
No, it's a real. It's a live action. Harry Hill plays Prince Charles. Not Harry Hill. Harry
Enfield.
Enfield plays Prince Charles.
Right.
And a guy from W1A who played Will. You know the really dim
the young guy. Yeah.
He plays
Will.
Prince Harry or whichever. I don't know. I'm not really good on the royal names, but I'd seen bits of her in the Windsors as well and thought she was quite a good actress. But of course that is without the realism, isn't it? Then because she's playing a caricature of somebody else, kind of thing. But yeah. She I think they'd certainly did a series anyway, a pilot series online called Tash and Ellie.
She's got the chops, as they say. I hate that expression and find myself using it. That's what happens.
Do you know, the more we look at these people, like for youngsters, the more you look in British comedy, you think, God, haven't they done a lot? They do tons of stuff, don't they? By the time you catch up with them in the mainstream, you think it's amazing how many programs they've been in and various stuff. And this doesn't even, like, if you look at IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, you're not even talking about plays or
no radio as well. I mean,
no radio.
You mentioned that with Jeff McGivern's busy without radio, so even busier with. Just a quick backtrack to Mr. Baladi. Did you look at his family history?
No.
His dad was is, I hope he's still with us, Syrian, and was the surgeon to oh God, I better check this, sorry. It sounds so unlikely, and I thought I was being scammed, but it seems to check out in other websites. Oh, lummy.
Didn't you say he was from Sutton Coldfield?
Well, he was born in Sutton Coldfield. Yeah, we were talking about that before we started recording.
Right.
His father, a Syrian father, was a doctor who was once the gynecologist to the wife of Colonel Gaddafi.
No way.
And either I'm being scammed consistently, or IMDb checks out with Wikipedia, and so it's so unlikely. It's almost like you wouldn't bother to lie about it because no one would believe you. So
yeah. That's a claim to fame and half, isn't it? That one,
just a bit. Yeah, where'd you go with that? I wonder.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you become a lead actor in The Office as the son.
Yeah. As to use a line from this particular comedy as well. Like, the last thing you want is somebody gulping up your chuff.
Yes, I believe that comes from our would-be Conservative politician.
That's right, yeah. Final clip? Should we have a final clip?
Let's do it.
Can I just say as well, it just reminded me that I wish they hadn't called the daughter Madonna.
Yeah, I did flinch every time I heard it. I thought, oh, we're going to see the real Madonna. Was that the concern, or
I just thought it was a bit. That was a bit too much. I think it was just a bit. I don't know. Maybe there are kids out there called Madonna.
But actually, if we're on names, there is a more serious complaint I have about the Mr. Baladi character name. Did you twig the significance?
No.
Do you remember her? We see her surname, the wife's surname, on the board, promoting her as a Conservative politician. I think it says Conservative. Did you see her surname?
Was it Fundy?
Actually, yeah, sorry. I always think it was Bundy, but the Baladi character is Ted, and I thought that's a little bit tasteless. Ted Bundy was a serial killer.
It was Ted Fundy. Because in fact, in this clip, I think he says, "I love you, Mrs. Fundy," or Kate Fundy, or whatever her name is.
Yeah, no, you're right. But it's quite close. Is that coincidence, or is it borderline tasteless?
You've been watching too many crime programs. I've told you about this before.
Obviously.
You've got to lay off the cheese as well. That's the combination is doing you no good at all.
I used to dream of having lots of cheese. Anyway, yes, lead us in, please. Oh, maestro.
Final clip. This is, and again, I chose this one because this is where it kind of all gets tied up, isn't it? The end bit, I suppose, where it's the resolution, isn't it? This really, I suppose, this particular scene where the police have turned up I did quite like the fact that an Uber car turned up, didn't it? And they wouldn't. It was an Uber share or something, so the other two people wouldn't get out, and he just drove
It wouldn't
off.
budge. That seemed very believable.
But the police came, and I mean, this is just kind of, as I say, no better way to introduce it than to say this is all the loose ends being tied up.
Ted and I got Madonna a car for her birthday.
What, so you did get her a car?
It's a Citroen C3.
Ooh, snaz.
It was supposed to arrive this morning when she was getting her hair done.
Great. Thanks very much.
What's your problem? It's going to get your girlfriend to hospital.
Car. Does that make me look?
Like a wedding DJ.
It's all right, Ted.
Oh, shit. What? Charlie.
Take me to hospital! This is no longer beautiful!
With you in a minute. He's got here. I haven't seen him in weeks. And even if I had seen him, which I haven't, I'd have been straight on the phone to you guys.
He's there.
What?
Sorry, Al. Nodded off on the bug.
William Hooper, I'm arresting you for criminal damage.
Oh, God.
We have CCTV footage that clearly shows you releasing several dozen cows from a local farm, causing major traffic disruption.
Well, I'll have to watch it back. Though it does sound like me.
What's happening, dude? Dad got pissed and broke into a farm.
Yep, not interested. There's a problem with Madonna's car. Unfortunately, my husband's had a rather nasty accident with a power saw. Do you have room to take him to hospital?
Thumbs in here, flanked by a pair of waffles. I'd recommend haste. It's on the thaw.
Right, stick him in.
Who finished the pagoda?
Don't bother!
Can you take my girlfriend?
Why?
I'm having a baby.
We'll be right behind you, darling.
I love you, Kate Fundy. I love you, April Long Carrington.
This is the best day of my life!
Yep.
Right, better get lunch on the go. I was going to have waffles.
Thanks, Barry.
No, I had fun. Keeps the depression at bay.
That ties that loose end up.
I'd changed the whole focus, and I'd have Barry as the main character. I just think it's like when this is what the car was. He went, "Ooh, snazzy." he just adds these little comments at the most inopportune moments, and you kind of think his brain is obviously working on a different time scale and level to everybody else's, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, he's not quite empathising with the pain going on, shall we say.
I was going to have waffles. He can't now because Ted's thumb's sandwiched in between two and they've gone off to the hospital. Oh dear. There's a great scene that Ted's involved in as well where he gets Lee Mack's character to try and suck the thumb because they're trying to start the Lamborghini with the
a fingerprint operated door, isn't it?
Yeah. And he says, Barry says, "Oh, suck it." And Lee Mack's trying to build up to suck it, and he puts it in his mouth, and he goes, "Oh, he's done it and all." He's only gone and done it.
Gagged on it. Yeah.
I loved it. Really loved it. I do wonder though, and I think it was at this point that I sat there and I thought, what the hell would you do for the next episode?
Yeah, where'd you go from there?
I don't know where you go. I mean, maybe they know that they're not going to get a series. I don't know, but where would you go with that? What would you do? How would you even begin?
I kind of sympathise with giving loads of aces in your pilot so that it's really impressive. But the danger of that is when I did a little bit of lighting back in my youth. Was electric lighting, do you mind? And my first instinct was to put all the lights on at the front, and the guy who was shadowing me, good pun, who was the normal lighting director, we're talking Amdram here, or Am Music actually, and he said, "You've got nowhere to go now, you've played all your aces up front." Right. And I'd shown all the lights we had. Right. And I learned a big lesson.
Couldn't you run out and put one on in the lobby or something? Or
I could have turned it up to 11, I suppose, on the rheostat. But yeah.
I mean, you know, you shouldn't hold that against it, but I just did kind of come away, like you said, A, feeling exhausted, and B, thinking, where on earth do you go after that? You know, what do you do next? I don't really know. Anyway, it's time to give it a score, I think. No more pontificating. Let's put our numbers where our mouths are. Do you want to go first?
I was going to very quickly pontificate, or actually I was going to ask you to pontificate. I was just going to ask very quickly, the guy at the centre of the storm, Lee Mack, do you feel it's playing to his strengths? Because I have my concerns.
Well, I do actually, and I'll tell you why. Have you ever seen Not Going Out?
Which I like, yeah.
I like, although they've ruined it now. It's up until about series 7, it was fine, and then they've tried to turn it into My Family 2.
Your favourite sitcom, if I remember correctly.
He got married to her, and and all that, and you've ruined it now. That for me, that's it. But anyway, Lee Mack's not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Is he making a lot of money from it? I shouldn't wonder. But the writing, I felt, was very similar pace, similar types of lines, similar reaction to situations. So I felt completely comfortable. You obviously didn't then. You didn't.
No, I would say the writing styles, I can see some parallels, but Lee Mack loves his puns, doesn't he? And wordplay.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little bit lacking. I thought he was a little bit straight as a character, but then maybe he wanted to stretch himself in that direction. He's done, as you say, loads of series of Not Going Out. So anyway, that's
and
for a
20-minute sitcom. It was a big ensemble as well, wasn't it? Really, he hadn't got all of the spotlight, had he? Really, in that sense, because you've got such a big cast.
Yeah. And also, slightly gives the lie to the blurb. If it's the worst half hour of his life, it's a measure of how quickly it's going that it only lasts for 20 minutes, that half hour. Maybe that's why it's so super paced. Right, okay. It's between 3 and 3.5 for me. There's some gut thing that I'm not warming to as much as I wanted to, because I come with a huge sympathy towards Lee Mack in the sense of love his work. And his sense of humour just tends to tickle mine. Let's go for 3.5. I'll be on the generous side because
have you ever seen him
pointed
live,
out.
by the way? Have you seen his?
I have, although I wonder if he was having a slightly off night because he was quite cold, and he looked to me so pumped up on adrenaline. He didn't need to be because he's a man who's earned his place in the comedy pantheon, and this is not so many years ago. So he was well established by then, and he just looked like he was going out for a fight, as if the audience were going to be against him.
Right, and
of course they weren't. They loved him.
Oh, a shame.
So yeah, slightly off night.
Do like his stand up. Anyway, sorry. So what did you?
I'm going to go for 3.5. Err on the side of generosity because there's lots to like, and in fact, doing this very slab, you've made me realise how many gems there are in there. So, what's your score out of 5?
I was going to go right down the middle, 2.5.
Really?
Yeah. I thought I was going to give it a 3, and I thought no, actually, I'm going to give it a 2.5. Not a malicious 2.5, not a how that will teach you 2.5, but because there are so many things that I kind of think, is it for me? Like the fact, I'm not a fan of farce, although I think they pulled it off. It was very fast paced, perhaps a little bit too fast paced. It was difficult to understand. There were just like little niggly things that I kind of think, okay, I'll split it down the middle, 2.5. Which is where I'm at. So 6 out of 10, though. This is a very respectable score for a pilot. 6 out of 10 for Semi-Detached. And as Adrian said, if you want to catch up with it, there is in the description, however you're listening to this, whether it's on Spreaker or YouTube or many of the other things that feeds, there will be a description all about it and tell you who the production company is and the cast and the writers and the directors. And there's also a little link there that you can click on and you should be able to find it there.
Absolutely. Don't think for a moment I've forgotten to prepare next week's homework, just because I appear to be slightly hesitant and you can hear some tapping furiously on my laptop. But are we at that point?
He's got a copy of the Radio Times in front of him. He's thumbing through so quickly.
Actually, we've got to do
the corners of the pages.
We have got to do something a little bit downbeat in a moment. We've lost a couple of comedy names just this very day. But we'll get to that in a mo. The show I want to set you as homework, I'm going to guess you're familiar with. If I mention the words bleak expectations, do we know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
And where you would find it?
Yes, yes, indeed.
Okie dokie. So this is, if you know your titles of Charles Dickens novels, it's obviously an amalgam.
It's what the kids would call a mashup.
A mash. I'm so sorry. Yes, because of my generation, I was going to say like my some fillings in my teeth, which are mercury amalgams.
Yes,
that shows a certain age, unfortunately.
Well, I know I'm no different. In our house, that is a term that's used for whether the potatoes that have been pummeled are ready.
Pummeled
is the mashup.
Well, anyway, yes, you can date us by our verbiage, but either way. As I furiously try and find a good episode for you, I think they're all good episodes. The ones
who's the writer? It's driving me mad now. I'm trying to think who the writer is.
Yes, don't ask me awkward questions while I'm on the fly. Mark Evans, of course.
Mark Evans, just fabulous. Right? I mean, I'm really going to enjoy this because the writing is just excellent.
And I should say, it did transfer to TV, did it not? But I'm talking radio here.
It did, and it did. I saw something that, and I thought, oh, that looked like Bleak Expectations, and it turned out it was the TV adaptation of it.
Oh, and it didn't necessarily go under the same name, did it?
No.
Was that the confusion?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to research that for next week. But I'm going to pick, this sounds rather odd, but there is a method in my madness, as the great bard said. It's Series 5, Episode 2.
Okay.
Bit strange, but the reason being it's got, as we speak, the longest shelf life on BBC Sounds. That's the app for listening to the BBC. And you may still be on iPlayer Radio. Wash out your mouth. But anyway, if that's the case, but it also... so you'll have about 3 weeks to get your act together from the time this drops, this particular edition of the Comedy Slab. This edition is called A Re-Excited Life Made Distinctly Dangerous. So even the titles are quite, of course, Dickensian and long and arguably over windy. So yes, enjoy. I hope you do.
Oh, well,
if you've never heard it before, I know you will.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of our listeners, but I think they'll enjoy it as well. I've got a good vibe. But that went out to just recently on BBC Radio 4 Extra, so you can stream it at your leisure if you're not on the app. Right. Quick mention for platforms we're on, which are wherever you are at the moment, obviously, which may or may not be Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Apple Podcast, YouTube if you want some slowly moving graphics, Stitcher, Spotify, thank you.
Yeah.
Et cetera,
I think people
et cetera.
tune in just for the slow-moving graphics. They turn the sound off and just watch the slow-moving graphics, I think. There you go.
There's a certain charm there.
And you can get us on the social media as well, on Facebook and on Twitter. Don't forget, you just need to check us out at Comedy Slab. That'll generally find us. Yeah, you mentioned we lost a couple of comedy greats this week.
This very day as we speak.
Yeah,
Yeah,
today,
Jeremy
actually,
Hardy, the news broke this morning. I think he died this morning. News doesn't always break on the same day, and they have to inform family and so on, which is entirely reasonable.
You know, I always thought was sad with Jeremy Hardy was he had that little cameo in Blackadder 4 that we were talking about before we started recording.
Yeah.
And I really like, and I must admit I used to like his Jeremy Hardy Speaks to the Nation.
Yeah, that was a Radio 4 show.
Radio 4 series. But I was just always a bit disappointed that he never did more acting, because I did think that he was really he brought the little bit that he did to some form of brilliance. I thought he was quite... but that's the way careers go, isn't it? You know, people go in different directions, and not always the direction that you'd like them to go.
No, it's amazing that they don't listen to us and let us guide their careers.
Terrible to lose them at 57, though, isn't it, as well?
Oh, that's way too young, and that is very sad. And actually, I just wanted to Google a bit of his earlier stuff on YouTube, because I saw Jeremy Hardy just in the last year or two, and it was interesting because people will have gathered we can be a little bit analytical. That's really a lot of the point of the Slab. And I'm sitting there analysing, and I have to say, I'd never seen a comedian throw away so many laughs in the way that Jeremy did. And that's not a deep criticism. I thought, well, look, he's experienced enough. He knows what he's doing. But if he was starting out, I could coach him and say, well, you could get a bigger laugh if you did this and this. As it was, he'd have walloped me, given his experience and wide acclaim. But I was just mystified by it. And also, it was a very reflective performance and the content as well, very much looking back on his career. And I don't know, I haven't really read in detail when he got ill, but I wondered if then he had some inkling that he didn't have long, because there was something about his performance. It wasn't quite a retirement tour, but there was something about it that it wasn't forward-looking. It wasn't urgent in the way that certainly younger comedians can be. So you kind of factor it in and you think, or is it just him growing up and just not being so needy for laughs? It's an interesting thing, but perhaps more will come out over the next few days. The other person, I had the privilege of working on Keeping Up Appearances, #name drop. Fortunately, he made some more years, although, as we were remarking again before recording this evening, I mean, you hear now of actors and Duke of Edinburgh going on into their 90s. Whether they should be driving is another matter entirely. But Clive Swift, we're talking about, who played the henpecked husband opposite Patricia Routledge. So rest in peace to both of those comedy greats. And the comedy scene will be poorer without them, but it's much the richer for them having been around and having left loads of stuff in terms of radio and TV recordings.
That's one of my guilty pleasures. That is Keeping Up. If ever it's on, I always think, I'll watch a bit of that.
Do you?
Great cast,
right.
Yeah, great cast. That's it for another Comedy Slab. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for patronising us. If you do, it's always great to have your company on board. From my point of view, time for a quick poo, I think.
Oh.